Yeah, buddy! Hello, Exiles. Good morning to you. I woke up to Vindication today. These are charm changes. They're not coming in the immediate next patch, but they are coming soon. And I am vindicated because last year I said this. Why are we locking charm slots behind modifiers you roll on an item that is being competed for by other modifiers on the item? Our guy. That's strange, right? I'm not alone in feeling that way. I was just lamenting the other day in my 0.23 things video, which will probably become an annual thing now as we're going through Po2's development, that only one of my ideas from that video actually made it into the game. Now it's two, and that feels pretty good. But enough harping on about how great I am. Let's talk about how great you are, because you all asked for monster speed changes and a number of other changes, and those are also coming, and they're being talked about. This is actually supposedly coming, I believe, in the immediate upcoming E-patch, as we'll call it. These changes are pretty massive. I'm personally very excited for them, because the Faradun in Act 2 are like the... Let's not say it that way. Let's say it that way. They're the balls-to-the-wall CBT machine that the game is kind of known for at the moment. When you get to the end of Act 2, right, and you're in the big chase, I guess, to get to the Act boss, very cinematic, awesome moment. And honestly, the way that they all rush at you is pretty cool. Unfortunately, as they mentioned, there's this issue where the monsters don't have interrupt events. Or rather, they do have interrupt events, where if their attack is no longer going to work, they will immediately stop it and come at you. And that's why they could feel so relentlessly swarmy. And they're removing those from all the Faradun, which means that all the mobs in that zone, more or less, are now going to be mobs you can play around. They're not just going to gang up on you and absolutely do things that would get this video demonetized if I describe them accurately. You know how it is. This especially, because that zone is a hard stop for especially players who are less skilled. But even players who are skilled, like, I think my first death was in this zone. And it was right at the start. I went in, I was fighting, it was fine. And then I think a mob with corpse explosion showed up, and just bad sequence of events happened, which kind of shows how deadly and dangerous it was. I almost think the way these, like, the Faradun acted, that interrupt thing, they could even title that as like a mod, like Relentless, right? And put that in a unique map or something for the future, because that's kind of a cool concept. Just not in the campaign when, you know, we don't have agency, right? You have to go through that zone. Outside of that, many other mobs that are known for being quick and getting right on top of you are going to be a little less annoying. Certain mobs in Act 3 that are known to kind of like pin you with a charge, they'll now push you to the side more often instead of doing that, which is honestly very nice. I believe the haste aura modifier can't appear on fast mobs anymore, which is also very good. I think I actually had... So when you first start mapping, you're always guaranteed to have a hideout, like, near you on the atlas to unlock your hideout. I already have all the hideouts unlocked, obviously, from last league, but when I went in there, there was an essence mob that was super fast and hasted with poison and, like, a greater in it, right? A greater essence. It almost bricked my map. It was crazy, man. I was shocked. It almost bricked the map because I just could not deal with this guy coming at me that hard. I died like 4 times. This is the most deaths I've had to any one creature in the game so far, and it was a rare, right? None of the bosses. I don't think I've died to a boss yet, which is crazy to say out loud, but yeah, this was, that could get bad. There's so many things here that are going to make us feel less slow, which is good, you know? That's the key of it. We feel slow and bad because it's in relation to other things always. I still think they need to up our speed a little bit, but, you know, a small amount. We don't need a lot, just a little bit, because there's a lot of dead space in the game. There's some boss changes as well. I'm a little confused about the Viper Natuatsu one, because they talk about how it's a challenging boss fight, and they're going to remove the size of Chaos Reigns, which is like the purple circles that appear. That was never the part of the fight that I had any trouble with. I always thought the part where the guys on the sides of the wall shoot spears at you was the hard part, because that hits so hard at times. I'm not sure about this. I don't think this is actually going to make it's not going to make it any easier for me. But if you were having trouble with that, maybe you'll feel better. Maybe it's the chaos is what people were worried about. I could see that being the case, right? You don't have chaos. It's balanced around 0 chaos res, but you don't have chaos res, so there's really no way to mitigate that, especially while leveling. You're not going to have meaningful chaos res, so it kind of makes sense, I suppose. And then Uxmal changed. He's the fiery guy at the top of the pyramid right before you go back in time. This is a pretty good one, kind of for a reason that probably won't apply to most people. This change especially got a chuckle out of me. He no longer recharges energy shield while in the air. I actually read a Reddit post the other day, maybe they did too, where very specifically someone was talking about how they got hard stopped at the boss because they had such bad DPS, and he would go up into the air and regen all of his energy shield before they could even get onto his HP. And I was like, oh man, that's like a genuine soft lock, right? If you can't get your DPS up some way, this is actually just going to block you from progression. So I'm glad they're doing that, because there shouldn't be situations like that. You should always be able to defeat a boss if you play well, no matter how bad your equipment is, right? Especially if you're going to go after Dark Souls type gameplay, which they need to be very careful with how they approach that. But let's be honest, you can beat all of Dark Souls, Elden Ring, whatever, at rune level 1 with the starter club and no armor. Path of Exile 2 isn't quite there. I don't think that's possible. We're never going to see someone beat the Arbiter with like their fists. It's just not going to happen. At some point, you're going to get a pattern that's going to be like, it's going to require perfect input, and eventually you're going to mess up the perfect input, and that's going to be like a 40-minute fight, if you're lucky. The Chimera. Okay. Yeah, sure, fair enough. These were both from Act 3, so I wasn't expecting them... Well, I guess this is from Act 3 too, but this was like in order of you fight them, and then suddenly we're going back to the Chimera. Yeah, I mean, I like the Chimera that you fight baseline. I hate the Chimera in the Ascendancy trial. I think everyone hates that Chimera. He flies all over the place, leaves ground effects, doesn't let you fight him, basically. Terrible boss. I hope they do something about that, because it kind of incentivizes people to build towards maximum offense, which I guess that's a problem inherent to the game overall right now. That especially is very frustrating. I guess this is nice. I've never had problems with this, right? He kind of advertises what he's doing very well. You want to be looking at the Chimera's mouths and his body, right? You don't want to be looking at the ground terrain. That's how you see what he's going to do, and you react accordingly. And then Mark's much lauded minion revive changes are in, where subsequent minion deaths will kind of bump the timer up without resetting it entirely. What that means is if you have a minion die right as your minions are about to revive, normally it would go back to another 7.5 seconds of waiting. Now it will go up a much smaller amount, and you'll get to a point essentially where your minions come back quicker if they're all dying slowly in sequence. And then Johnathan did make a good point that you can't just have them resurrecting independently. That is also a problem, in the sense that if they're all coming back one at a time, they don't get much done. That doesn't apply to companions, I'll admit. A keystone for companions that would kind of circumvent this would actually be kind of cool, especially if you're running the keystone that gives you 2 of them. Maybe they should just add that to that keystone, because a companion on its own can definitely get something done. And then some other player balance, specifically glory skills, no longer lose their glory if the thing is interrupted. I actually played with Spear of Solaris a little bit on kind of a funny meme version of the character. I was just, testing skills to see if there was something good or unused that maybe fit my character better. Spear of Solaris does not feel good to use, but the fact that it can get interrupted makes it feel even worse. Personally, I think Spear of Solaris either needs to have its damage boosted absurdly, or it needs to, it either needs to have its damage boosted absurdly, the beam that it calls down needs to move and track, right, and go to enemies, kind of like the laser in Helldivers 2 or something like that, or it needs to, come out instantly. Because this doesn't feel good to use. I'm just going to keep emphasizing that. I had very poor experience with this. I don't know why anyone would play with it. It looks cool. It doesn't hit hard enough for what it does, right? The actual impact is like an okay hit, but I feel like Primal Strike, whatever, the 3rd hit from that when consuming a shock, it does this huge wave that nearly kills everything on the screen and does a ton of damage, and it feels good to play around. This is the opposite of that. Not great. Hammer of the Gods, obviously, still pretty good, because you build it correctly, that's like a screen clear every time it comes up, and that's nice. Outside of that, if you're a caster, you have a bunch of rune effects to make use of now. I get the feeling this is going to be a big deal for those characters, especially considering they're in a little bit of a weak spot right now. They were very much so an archetype that crutched on a few certain things, and all those things got nerfed. And last patch, we did get a bunch of buffs to various, sorcerer skills, so it'll be interesting to see what this does. I'm hoping still, because they were talking about in the Zizern interview, that we're going to get higher resistance rolls on the elemental runes for our armor. Because they did point out that they're very poor in comparison to the crafting bench, which they're supposed to be a replacement for. I would just, personally, I would love to see the numbers go 15, 18, 20 instead of the 10, 12, 14 that we're at right now. We just need a little bit more, Not a ton, and it's admittedly, if you give too much, these become a little too good because it's in addition to 6 mods on an item, which is a little different than, you know, replacing the crafting bench. But it does feel like these need to be a little stronger in general as far as making our equipment better for resistances, because that's kind of a mandatory stat at a certain point. To be fair, in Path of Exile 2, it's really only mandatory, honestly, probably starting at like tier 4 or 5 maps, that it actually be capped. I say if you're at 50%, early waystones are not going to hurt you too badly, but you're going to feel it, and you're going to be working towards fixing it. And then lastly, some aforementioned stash tab and Atlas bookmark quality of life is coming. This is also part of the charm changes, which is coming later. They're not going to be right now. I do very much so look forward to some of these stash tab affinities, because it sucks that I don't have enough room in my primary tab for all of my runes like I did before. I think I saw T.S. Lily complaining about that, and I was like, yes. My heart goes out to her. That is, I just hate navigating my tabs when I'm dumping loot. I need to I should set aside a quad tab as a dump tab like most people do. Anyway, I woke up on the right side of the bed this morning. I hope you're all having a wonderful day. Path of Exile 2, as I had very faithfully declared, and maybe lost faith along the way, I had a feeling they were going to fix it. We kind of got here in a jarring way, but I think it's good that it happened, because clearly some disconnect. There was some major disconnect between, I think, specifically Johnathan and the player base, maybe Mark a little bit too, but Mark definitely was a bit more receptive to what people were asking for. Johnathan is very big picture focused, as far as I can tell, which kind of got him labeled the bad guy, and I think that's unfair. Whereas Mark is more about action solution focus, and I get the feeling that's their relationship behind closed doors. Johnathan is trying to hold the game in its shape, and Mark is trying to give him the solutions that won't compromise that. And eventually they're going to work that out, and we're going to get a game that plays very well and feels good to play. And I can confidently say that again, because they're making all the right changes, and we're getting some little things that like worried me that we hadn't gotten yet. And just yeah, now just give us quest versions for the Ascendancy trials that remove the honor mechanic, so we can just, well, we and new players especially can learn the mechanic without having to be punished for it, and you just kind of remove the bonus loot along the way. I still think that's a great idea from my old December 3 Things video that should really get looked at. And also, yeah, have a good one, Exiles. I'll have over there on the side, the link to my last 3 Things video, which just came out yesterday, and there's some stuff in there that I really hope they take into account, because I feel like not having the harvest resistance change crafts, which there's a very easy way to implement that in Path of Exile 2 right now, and also just the current nature of the Recombinator are very poor. And if that sounds interesting to you, maybe you'd like to check that out. Otherwise, until next time, which probably soon.